Listen, anybody who's had a daughter-in-law knows this look I'm talking about. It's a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. That's how my son Philip's wife, Kylie, looked at me the morning of the family photos. Not a real smile. More like she'd just bitten into a lemon and was trying to convince everybody it was a piece of candy. "Margaret, you're wearing that," she said. I looked down at my dress. I'd bought it special for this day. 2 months of saving my pension. It was a soft lavender, something my late husband Robert would have said made my eyes look pretty. Cost me $84 at the Bellevue Dress Barn. I thought it was lovely. "What's wrong with it?" I asked. Kylie did this little laugh, you know the kind. The kind that's not really a laugh at all. "Oh, nothing. It's just, well, the photographer's coming all the way from Seattle. These are professional portraits. For the Christmas card, you know. And the church directory." She smoothed down her own outfit, this sleek gray thing that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "It's just a little dated, don't you think? Honestly, you look kind of poor." Poor. She said the word like it was a disease. My hands tightened on my purse. The leather was cracked. Robert bought me that purse 20 years ago at a gas station in Coeur d'Alene. Best gas station purchase I ever made. I still remember him handing it to me, saying, "Maggie, every lady needs something to carry her secrets in." I had one secret left. And it was sitting right here in this purse. But I wasn't ready to use it. Not yet. See, I'm 68 years old. I taught second grade for 31 years at Lincoln Elementary before I retired. I've dealt with tantrums from 6-year-olds and tantrums from their parents. I've learned one thing: you don't argue with people who've already made up their minds. You just wait. And you watch. And when the right moment comes, you let the truth do the work for you. "Mom," Philip said, walking over. "My son. My only boy. He used to bring me dandelions in a paper cup when he was little." Now he was standing there, 34 years old, looking uncomfortable in his own skin. Maybe Kylie's got a point. She's really put a lot into this. The photographer's expensive, and what, Philip? You want me to change? He couldn't meet my eyes. That hurt worse than anything Kylie said. "I've got an extra blouse in the car," Kylie said. "It's last season's, but it's better than that." She said that the way you'd say roadkill. I didn't take the blouse. I just walked past her, into the living room where they'd set up the background. Kylie's house, of course. A big place in the Maple Hills development. High ceilings, white walls, everything so clean it felt like nobody actually lived there. You could smell the lavender air freshener plugged into the wall. Lavender. Fake lavender. Nothing like the real lavender bushes Robert planted for me in the backyard of our old house. The photographer was a young woman. Maybe 27, 28. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was adjusting her lights when I walked in, and she looked up and smiled at me, a real smile. "Hi there," she said. "I'm Emma." "Margaret," I said. "I'm the grandmother." "Lovely to meet you, Margaret." She didn't look at my dress like it was something scraped off her shoe. She looked at my face, you know? Like I was a person worth looking at. That's when I noticed it. The way she looked at me just a second too long. The way her smile flickered, just a tiny bit, like she was trying to place me from somewhere. But before I could think about it, Kylie came sweeping in with my grandkids, Mason and Ava. Mason's 7, loves dinosaurs and digging holes in the yard. Ava's 4, has the same copper hair my mother had. She ran to me right away. "Grandma." She grabbed my legs. "Grandma, you look like a princess." Children tell the truth. They haven't learned not to yet. Kylie pulled Ava off me. Okay, let's not wrinkle Grandma's dress. Everybody get in position. Emma, we're ready." We stood there for over an hour. Kylie arranged and rearranged us like we were pieces on a chessboard. Philip here, Mason there, Ava on Kylie's lap, me on the end. No wait, maybe I should stand in the back. No wait, maybe I'm too short for the back. Margaret, maybe just sit on the stool, Kylie finally said. It'll hide the dress isn't quite photographing well. Emma paused her camera. Actually, the lavender's picking up beautifully on my sensor. It's a wonderful color for her skin tone. Kylie's mouth tightened. But she couldn't argue with the professional, could she? Emma kept working. Click, click, click. She was good at her job. Made us laugh when the smiles got too stiff. Got Mason to stop picking his nose. Even got Philip to loosen up his shoulders. But every so often, I caught her glancing at me with that same look. Like she was solving a puzzle in her head. Then came the break. Kylie announced she wanted individual shots of the core family. That's what she said. Core family. Meaning her, Philip, and the kids. Margaret, you can wait in the kitchen, she said. We'll call you if we need you. If we need you. I'd raised Philip alone since his father passed. 10 years old when Robert's heart gave out in the middle of a softball game. I'd worked double shifts at the diner on weekends to pay for his baseball cleats, his braces, his college applications. And now I was sitting in the kitchen of a house my pension couldn't afford, being told to wait in case they needed me. I sat down at the kitchen island. The marble was cold under my hands. Through the doorway, I watched them. Philip was laughing at something Kylie said. Mason was doing a silly pose. Ava was twirling in her dress. My family. But somehow, not quite mine anymore. That's when Emma walked into the kitchen. She didn't say anything at first. Just filled a glass of water from the sink. Then she turned around and looked at me. Margaret, she said quietly. I need to ask you something. And you might think I'm crazy. I waited. Are you? Are you the Margaret? Margaret Ashby? From the Seattle Times story? 1983? My heart stopped for a second. Like it forgot how to beat. Nobody had asked me that question in 35 years. I'm sorry, Emma said quickly. My grandmother, she talked about you. She was a teacher too. In Olympia. She said there was a woman who did something incredible. For a student. For a whole group of students. She kept the newspaper clipping for years. Until she died last spring. I felt my hands starting to shake, so I folded them in my lap. You have her eyes, Emma said. My grandmother said Margaret Ashby had kind eyes. When you walked in, I thought it couldn't be. But it is, isn't it? You're her. I didn't know what to say. I'd kept that story buried for so long. Philip didn't even know. Robert didn't know. Nobody knew, except the people who were there, and most of them were gone now. That was a lifetime ago, I said. Emma nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her camera bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Ivory-colored, with a wax seal on the back. A real wax seal, like something from another century. My grandmother told me if I ever met you, I should give you this, she said. She wrote it the month before she died. She said you'd know what to do with it when the time was right. She pressed the envelope into my hands. Don't open it now, she said. Open it later. When you really need it. I stared at the envelope. My name was written on the front in shaky handwriting. Margaret Ashby. I don't understand, I said. Who was your grandmother? But Emma just smiled. The same kind smile from before. You'll remember. When you open it, you'll remember. And then Kylie's voice rang out from the living room. Emma. We're ready for the next set. And tell Margaret she can come back for the final group shot. I guess we can put her on the end. I slipped the envelope into my purse. The old cracked gas station purse that Robert gave me. Next to the only secret I'd carried for 35 years. I walked back into the living room. Back to my spot on the end. Kylie was adjusting her hair, checking her reflection in her phone. Philip was straightening Mason's collar. Ava reached for my hand. "Smile, Grandma," she whispered. I smiled. But my mind was on that envelope. And the secret inside it. And the secret already in my purse. 2 secrets now. One I'd hidden for 35 years. One I hadn't opened yet. The photographer raised her camera. Click. "Perfect," Emma said, looking right at me. Absolutely perfect. But she wasn't talking about the photo. And somewhere in my chest, underneath the hurt and the loneliness and the $84 lavender dress, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe my son's wife thought I looked too poor for family photos. Maybe my own son couldn't stand up for me. But 35 years ago, I'd done something that made a stranger's grandmother write me a letter from her deathbed. And some things, you see, are worth more than money. Some things can't be taken away by a woman with an expensive blouse and a hard heart. Some secrets have a way of finding the light. I just didn't know yet what kind of light was waiting for me inside that envelope. Or what it would cost me to open it. I drove home with that envelope on the passenger seat, my hands shaking a little on the steering wheel. Philip and Kelly had already left in their SUV. Kelly had said something about getting the kids cleaned up before the barbecue smell sets in. She didn't invite me to dinner. Of course she didn't. When I pulled into my driveway, I just sat there for a minute. The lavender dress felt different now. Not like a costume I'd been forced to wear, but like it belonged to someone who'd been asleep for 35 years and was just starting to wake up. I picked up the envelope and went inside. My little house on Maple Street. Robert bought this place in 1985, right after we moved here from Seattle. Said we needed a fresh start. Said nobody needed to know our business. Said it was better for Philip, better for all of us. And I agreed. I always agreed. I walked straight to the bedroom and closed the door. The afternoon sun was coming through the window, hitting the old quilt on the bed, the one Robert's mother made. And I sat down on the edge of the mattress and pulled out my wallet first. The wallet had 2 secrets. One was the folded-up clipping from the Seattle Times, yellow now and soft at the creases, dated March 12, 1983. I hadn't looked at it in maybe 10 years. But I always carried it. Just in case. Just so I'd remember I hadn't always been invisible. The headline said, "Teacher risks career to save student from unsafe home." There was a picture of me, younger, with a perm and big glasses, standing next to a skinny little girl with braids. Marisol. Her name was Marisol. I touched the photo with my thumb. I could still smell the chalk dust from that classroom. Could still hear the principal's voice telling me I'd gone too far, that I'd violated district policy, that I was facing termination. Could still feel the heat in my chest when I told him I'd do it again tomorrow. Marisol was 8 years old. She came to school with bruises on her arms. Bruises that looked like fingerprints. I reported it, like you're supposed to. Nothing happened. I reported it again. Nothing. Social services was backed up. The family moved around a lot. One Friday afternoon, Marisol showed up at my classroom door after the last bell, soaking wet from the rain, and said she wasn't going home. Ever. So I took her to my house. Me and Robert, we had Philip, he was just a baby. And we kept Marisol for 3 days while I called every number I could find, got a lawyer involved, made noise. The district said I'd overstepped. The newspaper got hold of it somehow, and suddenly there were cameras outside my classroom. The school board held an emergency meeting. I was suspended without pay, pending investigation. But Marisol got placed with a good foster family. Her father went to jail. And I lost my teaching job. Worth it. Every single bit of it. Robert stood by me the whole time. He told me, Maggie, you did what was right. Jobs come and go. You saved that little girl. We packed up our things and moved to a small town in Oregon. Started fresh. Never told Philip the full story, just said Mommy decided to stay home with him. That was the first secret in my wallet. The second secret was a photograph of Marisol and me, taken by a volunteer at the foster agency that spring. On the back, Marisol had written in shaky cursive, "Thank you for being my real family. Love, Marisol." She sent it with a drawing of a house with a big sun over it. I folded that drawing up too. It was in the wallet as well. I don't know why I never told Philip. Maybe I didn't want him to see his mother as someone who'd been in trouble. Maybe I was ashamed of losing my career, even though I wasn't ashamed of what I'd done. Maybe I just got used to being the quiet woman in the background, the one who packed lunches and ironed shirts and never made waves. But Kelly saw me as too poor for family photos. As if I'd never been anything. As if I'd never fought for anything. I put the clipping and the photograph aside on the bed and finally opened Emma's envelope. The letter was written on thick, cream-colored paper. The handwriting was old, a little shaky, but careful. Dear Ms. Ashby, you don't know me, but I've carried your name in my heart for 35 years. My name was Gloria Fernandez. Marisol was my granddaughter. I couldn't take her in myself. I was too sick, the cancer was already eating me up. But I followed the news about you. I cut out the article. I prayed for you every night. When my granddaughter was finally safe, I made her a promise. I told her, someday, you're going to find that teacher and you're going to thank her properly. She gave up everything for you. Don't you ever forget that. I didn't live long enough to see it. But my granddaughter Emma, she knows the story. She became a photographer. She told me once she wanted to take pictures of people who changed the world, even if the world forgot them. If you're reading this, then my Emma kept her promise. More importantly, it means you're still here. Still breathing. Still carrying that light. You didn't just save Marisol. You showed my granddaughter what courage looks like. And that seed you planted, it kept growing. Marisol became a social worker. She's helped hundreds of kids. All because one teacher said, "No, I will not look away." I'm writing this on my last good day. The doctors say I have maybe 2 weeks. But I want you to know, Mrs. Ashby, whatever the world took from you, whatever you lost, you built something that never stopped building. With all my gratitude, Gloria Fernandez. I read it twice. Then I just sat there with the paper in my hands, tears running down my face. Not sad tears. The kind of tears that come when something locked up inside you for too long finally gets to breathe. Robert never knew the full measure of it. He knew I'd helped a child and lost my job. He didn't know about the letters that came afterward. He didn't know I'd kept them. He died in 2014 thinking that part of our lives was wrapped up and put away. But Gloria's letter? That was new. That was from someone I'd never met, reaching across 3.5 decades to tell me my life had mattered. I heard the front door open. Philip's voice. "Mom? You home?" I quickly folded the letter and the clipping and put them back in my wallet. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and walked out to the living room. Philip was standing there with Kelly. She had that look on her face, the one that said she'd rather be anywhere else. "We forgot to give you the gift card," Kelly said, holding out a little envelope. "For the grocery store. Figured you could use it. $50. I could see the amount written on the front. "I appreciate that," I said, taking it. "But you know, something funny happened at the photo session today." Philip looked curious. Kelly looked bored. "The photographer," I said. "Her name is Emma." She recognized me. Kelly raised an eyebrow. "Recognized you from where?" "The library?" "From a newspaper story. 35 years ago. In Seattle." I watched Kelly's face. "Nothing." Philip's forehead wrinkled. What newspaper story? He asked. Before you were old enough to remember, I was a teacher in Seattle. I had a student who was being hurt at home. The system wasn't helping her. So I took her in for a few days while I fought to get her protected. I lost my job over it. But the little girl was saved. It was in the papers. Your father and I moved here after that. I never told you the details because we wanted a quiet life. Philip's mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. You never told me that. You were 2 years old. Later it just didn't come up. Kelly shifted her weight. So you were in the paper once? That's nice. Doesn't change much though, does it? I suppose not, I said. But the photographer's grandmother remembered. Wrote me a letter before she died. Her granddaughter was the one I helped. Philip stepped forward. Mom, that's incredible. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because I wasn't looking for credit. I did what I did. Then I raised you. That was my life. Kelly's jaw tightened. Look, that's a sweet story, but we need to get going. The kids have soccer tomorrow. She started toward the door. Philip hesitated. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not guilt. Something deeper. Like he was seeing me for the first time. Dad knew, he asked quietly. Dad was my biggest supporter. He said jobs come and go. Doing what's right lasts. Philip swallowed hard. Kelly was already out the door, calling his name. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We need to talk more about this. Anytime, I said. After they left, I sat on the couch and let the quiet settle. The house felt different now. Less empty. The lavender dress was still on, and I didn't feel like taking it off. Emma had given me her card. I picked up my phone and looked at it for a long moment. Then I called her. Mrs. Ashby? Her voice was warm. Emma, I read your grandmother's letter. Silence. Then a soft exhale. I'm so glad. I've been carrying that envelope for 2 years, just waiting. My grandmother made me promise. She told me about Marisol. About what she became. A social worker. She's in Portland now. Would you want me to give you her number? She's been wanting to thank you her whole life. I closed my eyes. 35 years of silence, and in one afternoon, everything was reaching back to me. Yes, I said. And Emma? I have a favor to ask. That newspaper article you mentioned, do you have a copy? My grandmother had it laminated. Why? Because I think it's time my family understood who they'd been sitting next to at dinner. Emma laughed softly. I think that's a wonderful idea. When I hung up, I walked to the hallway closet and looked at the boxes. Robert's things. Philip's old baseball trophies. And one small box labeled Seattle in Robert's handwriting, which I hadn't opened since we moved in. Inside was my old teaching certificate, some letters from parents, and a framed copy of that same article, yellowed but intact. I pulled it out and set it on the mantel. Right where everyone could see it. Some secrets find the light. And I was just getting started. Sunday dinner at Philip and Kelly's house. That was the battlefield, and I knew it. Kelly always made a big production out of Sunday dinner, roast chicken, those little potatoes she saw in a magazine, wine she couldn't pronounce. It wasn't about feeding people. It was about showing them how good she was at it. I showed up 10 minutes early, which I never do. Kelly opened the door in her pressed white blouse and her careful smile, and the smile flickered when she saw the framed article in my hands. Margaret. You're early. And, what's that? I stepped inside. Something I'd like to share with the family. Philip was in the living room, half watching a Seahawks game. He stood up when he heard my voice. Mom? Emma was there too, sitting on the edge of the couch with a cup of tea. She gave me a small nod. We had planned this. Kelly's eyes narrowed. Is this about that old newspaper thing? Philip told me. Look, Margaret, if you're trying to make some kind of point, the point, I said, setting the frame on their granite kitchen island, is that for 35 years, I let my son's wife treat me like I was invisible. Like I was an embarrassment. And I let it happen because I thought keeping the peace was more important than keeping my dignity. The room went quiet. Philip's face was pale. The boys, my grandsons, 10 and 12, were in the backyard with the dog. Thank God for small mercies. Kelly laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. This is ridiculous. You're making a scene because I asked you to wear something nicer for family pictures. That's what this is about. You've been holding on to some old clipping for 30 years just to. This isn't about the pictures, Kelly. It was never about the pictures. I opened the large envelope I'd brought. Besides the article, I had the thank you letter from Gloria Fernandez, the drawing from Little Maria. And one more thing I hadn't shown anyone, the letter the school board sent me in 1983, telling me my contract would not be renewed due to inappropriate contact with students' families. Read it, I said. All of it. Philip picked up the articles, his hands trembling slightly. He'd seen the newspaper clipping, but not the rest. He read Gloria's letter aloud, his voice catching on the words. Dear Mrs. Patterson, you didn't just save my granddaughter. You showed her that someone believed her. When the system failed, you didn't. I will thank God for you every day of my life. He got to the school board letter and stopped. His face went red, then pale. They fired you? For protecting a kid? Officially, they didn't renew my contract. Unofficially, I was told if I pushed it, they'd make sure I never taught anywhere again. The school board president's brother-in-law was related to the girl's stepfather. That's how it worked back then. That's how it still works sometimes. Kelly crossed her arms. That's a sad story. It really is. But I don't see why you have to bring it up now, in my house, like this is some kind of trial. Because you need to understand what you've been looking down on. My voice was steady, quieter than I expected. You looked at my shoes and my coat and you saw poor. You didn't see the woman who gave up her career so a 12-year-old girl could have a chance. You didn't see the woman whose husband worked double shifts so she could still send money to that girl's grandmother for years after. You saw wrinkles and old fabric and assumed there was nothing underneath. Kelly's mouth opened, then closed. Philip turned to her. You told her she looked too poor for family pictures. I was just trying to. You told my mother she looked too poor. His voice was something I'd never heard from him. Not anger, exactly. More like waking up. She raised me alone after Dad died. She paid for my college by cleaning houses. And you're embarrassed by her jacket? I didn't know any of this. Kelly's voice cracked. How was I supposed to know? You weren't, I said. But you also never asked. You never wondered. You just decided I wasn't worth knowing. The doorbell rang. Kelly looked at the door like it was a life raft. I'll get it. She opened it to find a woman standing there, a woman with dark hair streaked gray, wearing a simple blue dress and holding a small bouquet of flowers. Hello, the woman said. I'm looking for Margaret Patterson. I was told she might be here. I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in 35 years, but I knew it. Maria? She stepped into the light, and her face crumbled. Mrs. Patterson. Oh my God. Mrs. Patterson. We crossed the room toward each other at the same moment. She was taller than me now, a grown woman with fine lines around her eyes and a warmth that radiated from her smile even through the tears. I've been looking for you for 20 years, she said, holding my hands. When Gloria passed, I found your letters. You wrote to her every month. For 15 years. I never knew. Emma helped me find you, I said, gesturing. Maria turned to Emma. Your abuela. She was my grandmother. She talked about you all the time. Then back to me. I'm a social worker now. Because of you. I work with kids in the same kind of situation I was in. I've been wanting to tell you that for so long. Kelly stood frozen by the still open door. Philip wiped his eyes. The boys had come in from the backyard and were watching, confused. This is Kelly, I said to Maria. My daughter-in-law. She was just learning something important. Maria looked at Kelly, then at me, and seemed to understand. She had 35 years of practice reading rooms. It's nice to meet you, Maria said politely. Your mother-in-law is the reason I'm alive. Kelly's face crumpled. Not in a dramatic way, just the way a person looks when something heavy finally lands. I didn't know, she whispered again. I didn't. You didn't ask, I repeated, but this time my voice was softer. And I didn't tell. I've been hiding this story for so long that I forgot it was mine. I let Robert keep it safe for me, and when he died, I thought that part of my life died with him. But it didn't. It was just waiting. Philip walked over and put his arm around me. Mom. I'm sorry. I should have asked you more. About everything. You couldn't have known what I didn't show you. Kelly sat down heavily on one of the kitchen stools. The family photo she'd been so worried about was still scheduled for next weekend. I knew she was thinking about it. I told the photographer we had to postpone, she said quietly. After what I said to you, I couldn't. The pictures can wait, I said. But I think we need a different kind of picture now. One that tells the truth. Maria reached into her bag. I brought something. My grandmother kept it all these years. It was a photograph. A small, faded school portrait of a dark-haired girl with frightened eyes. On the back, in a child's handwriting, to Mrs. Patterson. The best teacher in the whole world. Love, Maria. This was in her Bible, Maria said. She prayed for you every night. I held the photograph and felt something shift inside me. All those years of staying quiet, of folding myself smaller so I wouldn't upset anyone, of letting Kelly's words cut me because fighting back felt like too much work, it all drained away. Kelly, I said. When we do take those family pictures, I'll wear whatever I want. And I want Maria in some of them. She's family too, in a way. Is that going to be a problem? Kelly looked at Philip. He looked at her. She looked at me. No, she said. It's not a problem. She said it like she was testing the words. Like she wasn't quite sure if she meant them. But then she stood up, walked over to the kitchen drawer where she kept her good stationery, and pulled out a notepad. I want to write down everything, she said. Your story. What happened? If that's okay. Why? Because. She hesitated. Because I have 2 sons. And I've been so busy trying to make everything look perfect that I've been teaching them all the wrong things about what matters. And because I was awful to you, and I can't undo that, but maybe I can understand it. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was the closest thing to one I'd ever gotten from Kelly. And that was enough for now. We spent the next 2 hours at that kitchen island. Not eating Kelly's carefully planned dinner, that got cold and nobody cared. Maria told us about her life in Portland, the kids she'd helped, the system that had failed her and how she was trying to fix it. Emma shared stories about her grandmother Gloria that made us all cry. Philip asked questions I'd never heard him ask anyone, about me, about Dad, about the years before he was born. And Kelly listened. She took notes in her careful handwriting, pages and pages of notes. Halfway through, she got up and put the kettle on. When she handed me a cup of tea, she looked at me differently. Not like I was a problem to manage. Like I was someone she was finally seeing. The next Saturday, we took the family photos. Kelly had hired the same photographer, a woman named Denise who'd heard some of what happened and offered to redo the session for free. I wore my best dress. It wasn't expensive. I'd bought it at a consignment shop 6 years ago. But it fit me perfectly, and it was blue, the color my mother always said brought out my eyes. I didn't let Kelly's glance make me feel small. I just smiled. Maria came, as promised. We took pictures in every combination Kelly could think of, just the boys, just the grandchildren, Philip and Kelly, all of us together. Then she said, "Now one with Margaret and Maria. Right here, by the fireplace." I stood next to Maria, my arm around her shoulder, the framed newspaper article on the mantel behind us. "Say something," Denise the photographer said. "Not cheese. Something real." Maria laughed. "How about best teacher in the whole world?" "That's a lot of words," I said. "Then just family." We said it together. The camera clicked. Afterward, walking through the backyard, Kelly caught up with me. The boys were playing catch with Philip. Emma was showing Maria something on her phone. The late afternoon light was golden and forgiving. "Margaret," Kelly said. "I want to show you something." She handed me an envelope. It was the kind of thick, expensive stationery she used for thank you notes. Inside was a handwritten letter. "The thing you said," Kelly rushed on, the words tumbling out. "About how I never asked. You were right. I spent 4 years treating you like background noise. I was so busy being the perfect wife and mother that I forgot to be a decent human being. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed to say it, and I needed to say it properly." I read the letter right there, in the golden light. It wasn't long. It didn't make excuses. It said things she probably couldn't say out loud, about her own insecurities, her fear of not being good enough, her habit of measuring everyone by the wrong yardstick. And it ended with 4 words I never thought I'd hear from Kelly: "You were worth knowing." I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. "Kelly," I said. "I spent 35 years hiding the best thing I ever did because I was afraid of what people would think. You spent 4 years hiding who you really were because you were afraid of the same thing. Maybe we both have some catching up to do." She smiled. A real smile, not the polished one she used for company. "I'd like that. The catching up part. Then we start now." The sun sank lower. The boys ran over, demanding ice cream. Philip called my name, asking if I wanted to stay for dinner. Maria hugged me goodbye and promised to visit next month. Emma winked at me like a co-conspirator. I stood in my son's backyard, in my 6-year-old consignment shop dress, and I felt rich. Not in the way Kelly meant it, with designer labels and matching accessories. Rich in the way that matters. Rich in truth, in connection, in the weight of a life finally fully lived and finally fully seen. That night, when I got home, I put the school portrait of young Maria on my mantel next to my wedding photo with Robert. 2 bookends of my life. The love I'd chosen and the choice that had defined me. Some stories take 35 years to finish. This one was just beginning. And I was ready.